her big claim to fame is selling Murkowski's old plane on eBay and having to actually sell it at a loss, which is part of her whole storyline of being a reformer. But she actually supports Ted Stevens, and that she was actually for the Bridge to Nowhere before she was against it. But the real big one for this one, I think, would be the fact that the state of Alaska is swimming in federal tax dollars. For every dollar they send, they get back like $1.84, and that every Alaskan gets $1,200 a year because of the fact that they sit on one of the biggest oil fields in North America. So she hasn't really had to have that much executive experience. So you just talk about the fact that, yeah, 2 years as governor is great. Would have made her an excellent candidate for vice president or even president in 2012. But in the 2008 cycle, her lack of executive decision making outside of being mayor of a small town of 9,000 people, which has nothing to do with being bitter about small towns, just doesn't qualify you for being vice president in a heartbeat away. But what you need to remember is, especially when it comes to questions about presidential elections, and especially in the general election, where everybody's paying attention and everybody is unfortunately the election has gotten partisan. I mean, we can all acknowledge that there was McCain and Obama originally wanted to have an election of issues, but it's gotten partisan, and some even believe the culture wars have been reignited. So what you want to do is, if you make any claims like this, you want to back them up with fact. You want your fact to be strong enough to support your analysis. And that's what you should have in every speech. Not just speeches about Sarah Palin, but speeches about the economy in Japan and why the prime minister will change every 6 months until something radical happens. I don't know. I'll become prime minister of Japan someday. Thank you. Let's see. What time is it?
3:20. Whatever. 3:15.
Okay. Good. So then, what you need to have, if you're doing 2 by 2, we'll go over here. You want to do the same thing, but you need your second point to focus on something completely different than your first point. Even if you're doing 3 by 1 or 3 by 2, and you don't have to subscribe to the theory of unified analysis, don't worry about it. You still want each main point to stand alone. You want the judge to be able to look at their flow after your speech and say, well, you know what? I think there was a flaw in that lack of experience argument. But when you're looking here, their second argument, that's a strong argument. That stands up. If for any reason your second argument is predicated on anything out of your first argument, and your first argument has a flaw of any nature, you can kiss your second argument goodbye as well. So that's just something to realize, that the good speeches are ones that have independent ones. So if we have a lack of experience on that side, and we are to believe that T-Rod's prognostication that Sarah Palin will destroy the Republican chances in 2008 November, what's our second point going to be?
Energize the Democrats.
Energize the Democrats. And this gives us a nice balance, because you never want your main points to be flip sides of the same coin, but you want them to highlight and shine light on 2 different aspects of the election, 2 different aspects of the situation. And what this does focuses on kind of the voters in the middle. It's people who are undecided, people who are waiting to make their decision after the convention and watch the debates. That's what that addresses. That addresses resume. This addresses getting out the vote, GOTV, the enthusiasm of the base, and that's something that'll give you a good balance. Now, if you were to do a third point, what would you think?
Potentially estrange the base.
I think the Republicans like her a lot. I think the conservative voters like her, so I don't know if that's.
Yeah, but I guess.
I think it would be a stretch, and I think you would take away 2 good points, and the judge would suddenly start to focus on your kind of squirrely, not so
Fair
you know,
enough. Fair
add
enough.
the third one.
You could maybe get a third point that focuses on, like, the fact, because she's a mother and there's been a lot of focus, the fact that she's a woman, it brings focus to that, could maybe pull away from what McCain's strong points are.
I think
I don't know, that doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, and I can't think of how to
we
phrase
don't want to
it
worry
fit on a
about.
bumper
You don't want to
sticker,
worry
but-
about fitting it on a bumper sticker
Right,
right
but
now.
I'm
It's
just thinking, I'm trying to think of how to phrase that shorthand.
Well, I think I see like how it would distract from his story
Right,
and his
exactly.
you know, kind of the story arc they're going for. But I think at the same time, what it does is it actually helps McCain, you know, with female voters where he has struggled in the past. But I think what this highlights is there are some people who are like strictly 2x2. There are some people who are strictly, you know, at 3x1. But what I came to believe is that you choose the structure of the speech based on the question you have and the files that you have on it. I mean, obviously that's based on whether or not you feel comfortable with 2x2 and 3x1. When you get to the point where you feel comfortable doing that, and I recommend practicing with 2x2 and with 3x1 to familiarize yourself with both, then, you know, in a situation like this, you won't feel stuck in a 3x1 where you don't have that third point and you just have to come up with something on the spot. You can, you know, slide into a 2x2, give a really strong speech and still do really well. So I think that's an important thing to have, that flexibility in what structure you use. Any questions so far? Anything? All right. What makes a good extemp source is also something that, you know, should be addressed. Obviously, you know, newspapers, magazines like The Economist, Business Weekly, you know, other magazines like that, you definitely want to use. However, things that I would recommend not using, Us Weekly, obviously, even though they have addressed surrogate, Fox News, because even though there are different sides to the argument. Some people say, well, it's fair and balanced. Some people say no. It's, you know, it's the RNC in TV form. You don't want to get your speech caught up in that. You want to use sources that you won't have to justify using. So just avoid the Fox News, and it'll save you a lot of time and hassle. Also, I would recommend avoiding the AP and Reuters because they're news wires, unless you're using them for statistics or kind of polls. But if you're using them for news information, I would avoid them for two reasons. First, since they're a newswire, they want to get the story out there first. So while accuracy is important to them, you know, being the first to publish it is also very important. And secondly, and this is a little media nerdish of me, but it's worth delving into for 15 seconds. The new head of the AP, Ron Fournier, who writes a lot of good articles about the presidential election, has decided that the AP needs to get more into investigative journalism, and it's opening them up to a lot of calls of bias. So if you run into judges who are, you know, familiar with what the AP is doing, they're going to be like, I'm sorry, you're using a news source that has, you know, a clear bias nowadays. So, you know, avoid the news, the wire services, because you're going to find newspapers that have them in it anyway, and they're adding their own reporting as well. So again, it's all about being as credible as possible and leaving as little, you know, for the judge to knock you down for, to say, well, you know, why couldn't you find a better source? Even better for international